families. A lot of times I hear, how can I support my kindergartners reading at home? Well, the very first thing you can do, and the most important in my opinion, is read to them every single night. Read to them books that they love and that they choose and that they get to hear again and again and again. It's really important for them to start connecting the pictures to the spoken word on the page. It's also really important for them to see you modeling proper reading behaviors. For instance, they see you opening the book and holding it up and down. They see that the pictures are going the correct way. They see that as you're reading, you're pointing to the words and sliding across, and you're connecting it with the pictures on the page that they see. Also, it's a really fun way for you to go back and talk about what that book meant and share it. At the beginning, you're reading mostly to your children. Eventually, you will read with them, and finally, they'll read to you. When we first start reading, one of the most important things we can do is learn our letters. That's a big part of kindergarten at the beginning of the year when we spend so much time learning our letters. Both uppercase and lowercase is required in kindergarten. Eventually, we will learn that those letters have sounds, and we'll connect them through our foundations like D, D, dog, D, D, dog. That's called a phoneme, D. It's the smallest unit of sound. Then what we always move to is called Elkonin boxes, and you can make these at your house. It's really a fun game to do with your kids, and you just split those words into the smallest unit of sound by separating them by their phonemes. So this is a picture of a cup. So what's the first sound that goes there? You would write C with your child. What's the second sound that goes there? You'd write a U with your child. Third sound, write it together. You can make Elkonin boxes in 2 words like it, or a cup, or go on and on as much as you want. That's a great prerequisite to teach your child how to integrate what they're learning with letters, sounds, into words that they can write. Eventually, your child will be reading CBC words like p, p. The foundations training that we use here at kindergarten at Coronado is we either use the tapping method to break out all those phonemes, p, 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 or in my class we use the gum, p, p, p. Eventually, we want children to move past the CBC words that they can build and take apart and read, to even reading nonsense words. Why read nonsense words? Because that's telling you that your child can read those phonemes in any construction, whether they make sense or not, and it's showing you that they really have that down. M, I, G, mig. The other piece that's really important when we're starting to read is rhyming. You can read lots of books. Most children's books are written in rhyme, and that's a great way to pull those out. You can play games like bingo, like frog, log, pie, eye, 5, hive. And then eventually, you'll start moving into what we call our powers. Our powers say we have pointer power. So when we open our book, we now know how to take a picture walk. So the very first thing we always do with our students is take picture walks. That's one of the most important things you can do. Take your time. Walk through. Discuss every single picture in there. Talk about where it takes place, what the child is doing in the picture, and walk all the way through it so that they can tell the story through the pictures first. This is called picture power, and it's one of the most important steps that we teach. We call them picture walks. After they have gone all the way through, we move onto the book and we tell them always the title, Bubbles. Bubbles. At this point, they should have a little bit of a sight word library that we have passed out and have been doing since the beginning of the word. Simple words like I, a, go, you, can, like, and love are always good words to start with. So this one, they know that the first word is bubbles because we talked about it in the title. I always read the first couple pages to them. Bubbles at the beach. Bubbles in the bath. Right there, I'm teaching them pointer power, that one word gets 1 point. I'm also teaching them sound power if I get lost. Bubbles at. Bubbles at the beach. I'm also teaching them reread power just then, because once I got the word, it's important to always go back and reread that sentence fully so that meaning isn't lost down the road. So here I go. Bubbles at the beach. Bubbles at the bath. If a student does that and clearly that word says in, I'll always say, I notice after they finish reading, not while they're reading. Before we move on, I noticed that you said bubbles at the bath. That word right there says in. I know that at starts with an a or a sound. So if that's not right, we have to start attending to what we're reading and read what's on the page. So I'll usually ask the student to take a running start and try all over again. Bubbles at the beach. Bubbles in the bath. And I'll even have a pointer while they're pointing, and I'll double tap my hand. Students will be reading down here, and I'll even read with them, and I'll go like that. That means attend to that word really, really well. Bubbles in the, and I'll stop, and they'll say sink, because they can look at the picture. Sink. Bubbles in my, they might say glass, but by this point, they already know that the DR together makes a dr. If they don't remember that blend, it's more than okay for you to go ahead and say to them, dr, and reread it. Bubbles in my drink. They'll fill in it for themselves. Bubbles in the clothes. Bubbles that I blow. You can hand them that blend again. Blow. Then they read the title. Bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. And this is a long word, and we call it a slider. It means it's not 1 point, it's a big slider. I always give them those tough words. Everywhere, and they can read those 2 sight words, I go. Then they go back and they reread and they reread again. And that's what this power is. We have reread. That's when you're fixing those mistakes, and that's when you're going back and rereading it to build fluency. And fluency means the rate at which someone reads. Eventually, we will be talking about not reading like a robot and using our words to speak like somebody who's talking normally speaks. And then it's really important to go back and talk about your book talk. What was this book about? What happened in it? Why was that important? Can you connect it to a life event that happened to you once when you were working with bubbles? For instance, like, what do you know in your house that makes bubbles, or tell me a story about when you were working with bubbles. Now, one thing that's really important is a lot of parents get caught up on just that, getting, like saying, sound it out, sound it out, sound it out. While that is one power of our reading, which we call sound power, sounding it out, that really blocks children from really developing their meaning for themselves. It's really building that catalog of sight words beforehand, that phonemic awareness, and that background knowledge, and talking about how they, stories about bubbles and working with bubbles and where they'll find them in their house, and doing those picture walks that really help bring home that reading. The other piece that's really important to know, as they read through their reading, you've got to give them lots of wait time. As parents, we want to go in and we want to rescue right away. We want to give them those answers. But if we don't, we're going to get word callers. If we're constantly feeding them the words, our children are going to start reading like this. Bubbles in the, that's called looking for parents to solve the problem. Sink. Bubbles in my, they're not doing any of the thinking. You've got to let them do the thinking. Sometimes 10 seconds or more, up to 15 seconds, is a really good thing to do. I always keep my eyes on the text when I'm reading with a student, so that if they appeal to me for help, I just keep staring at it. And then they go back and they look at me, and then they'll really try to work through that word. And again, you can give beginnings at the beginning to help. Bubbles in the, and you can ask them questions like, what word makes sense there? Look at your picture for clues to help. Go back and reread and try again. You can see the first sound, you can see the last sound. What makes sense there? Those are the good reading strategies we use. Looking at pictures, looking at beginning sounds. Try reading the word. Does it make sense? Does it sound right? Go back and read it again. And here's a does it sound right. Bubbles in the star. Well, does that make any sense? It doesn't. Does that even match the print that we're seeing here on the paper? It doesn't. Maybe they could read bubbles in the sink. That doesn't sound right. What does? Their mind is doing the thinking. Bubbles in the sink. Bubbles in the sink. They're starting to tie all the meaning together through their pictures and what sounds right and what makes sense. Let them think through their writing or their reading, or they're not going to be able to progress on their own. They will be constantly appealing to you for help, and that's something we do not want. The other thing that's really important for our little learners is for them to write constantly. When children write, they connect all the pieces of alphabetic principle, knowing those letters, phonemic principle, and phonological awareness, where they know that those sounds together create words, and they also create meaning for them in their own lives of what makes sense to them. So I used to tell my students, or ask them rather, what did you do over the weekend? And they could say, I made cookies. So for instance, when we first start writing, we just make a line, I made cookies. And we know that a period always goes at the end. When they're writing the word I, we teach from the very beginning that I stands alone, and that I is also a sight word that they've been practicing. And we also say all sentences begin always with a capital letter. Made. This is where it gets tricky. We have to use either the tapping or the gum. D. I made cookies. Now you'll see your child rereading over again, but they cannot generate these things all by themselves all at once at the beginning. They're going to need to go slow and steady, and you're going to need to be very patient with them as they work through it. I made cookies. You could either use a C or a K. Either would work there. I made cookies. That's a really great way to start it out. At the beginning, you might even see people just write this, cookies. As they get stronger in their writing, they'll learn concepts like magic E, where the E makes the A say its name because the vowel flips from a short A to a long A. And they'll be able to write, I made cookies. They'll learn about word families, where the O makes the And they'll learn that K is needed when it's a double syllable, when there's more than one syllable. And they'll learn about vowel pairs that go together to make different sounds. That is very advanced. That's not where we're looking at. But if you really want to start, if your learner is at that point and you want to support that, you can go ahead and find texts like Cookies Week is one of our favorite books. And you can say, oh, where could you find that? Oh yeah, that's right. We have a recipe box with the word cookies on it. Or you can find the book Cookies Week and go ahead and read it and use that to help inform your thinking. I tell my students all the time that the world is full of words and that you can find them everywhere and that you can generate them everywhere. You just have to look. We call that environmental print. So I'm going to show you a text at the end of the year. This is a level C. This is where we're expecting our kindies to be by the end of the year. So what's the first thing we do? Picture walk. And I always give the title before the picture walk. Draw a pig. And then I ask them, what do you think this story is going to be about? Drawing a pig? Oh, well, do you know how to draw a pig? What shapes would you use? Those are all good springboard activities before you even start reading that you could do with your child. So for instance, they could say, well, I know that a pig has a circular face and 2 triangle ears, and then he has a circular snout with 2 lines, and he has 2 circles for eyes. He has an oval body and a little curly tail, and he has 4 rectangles for feet. That's also a good way for you to go ahead and talk about shapes. Then you can go ahead and start looking through the book again. Look at all the pictures first. What do you think he's doing? Oh, he wants to draw a picture. What shapes do you think he's going to use first? He's drawing circles. What else do you think he's doing? And you can sometimes feed vocabulary like, oh, it looks like he's putting dots on the picture. And the reason I said that is because I know the word dots is going to come up there. And I know the word 4 is going to come up there. So I could even say, it looks like he's putting 4 dots there. Kind of front loading. Front loading means setting the stage for your learner to get those words correctly. Oh, what does he have now? Point to them. Oh, he has triangles. What now? Squares. Tail. Oh, that looks great. I just went ahead and I fed them that vocabulary before they even saw it. I'd say, oh, that looks great. Don't you agree? So we can go back, and this time when they read it, remember, always give the first 2 pages of reading so that you're establishing the pattern. Want to draw a pig with me? Notice how my voice went up because I had a question mark. Draw 3 circles. It's as easy as can be. Their turn. Draw 4 dots. It's as easy as can be. Oh, there's a pattern happening. Draw 2 triangles. It's as easy as can be. And if they get trapped right here at 2, draw 12 triangles. You can go back and point to those things. Say, use your pictures as clues to help you out. Remember, if they're appealing to you right and left, you still look down and you say, let's look at those pictures to help us out. And then go back and have them reread it again. I always say, take a running start or get your mouth ready. Draw 2 squares. It's as easy as can be. Draw 1 and we look at the picture. What's the only new thing? The curly line. And if they say draw 1 curly lin, you say, I see a magic key there. Flip the vowel. They're gonna go, oh, look I, line. Reread it. Draw 1 curly line. It's as easy as can be. Our pig looks great. Don't you agree? And then you can have them go back and talk about their story and how they made it go ahead with, or how they connected it with their drawing as well. Again, the most important thing that you can do is give them think time, wait time. Let them work through it. Let them use their pictures to help them make sense of the story. Let them hear the pattern so that they can make sense of the story. It's even a good idea for you to go ahead and read that book a few times before you have them try it, so that they're establishing what the pattern sounds like, so that they can hear the punctuation and they hear kind of the rhythm of the story. And then have them go through it, looking at pictures, looking at beginning sounds, rereading words, asking themselves the most important 3 questions. Does it look right? Does it sound right? Does it make sense? And most importantly, if you don't have it right the first time, going back and reading it again and again and again to build that fluency or rate of speed. And then eventually they'll be able to read it the way we talk instead of robotic, like draw 2 squares. It's as easy as can be. If they hear a good person, or a strong reader modeling for them what it sounds like, draw 2 squares. It's as easy as can be. They will copy that same rhythm they hear from you. So model that for them when you do your pre-reading where you're reading the story to them. I hope those tips have given you a little insight on how to help your kids best at home. Happy reading, everybody.